Yay, Media Group.
In the world of tasting coffee, we focus on aroma, flavor, body, aftertaste, and acidity. When we think of adding plant-based milks to our coffee, we have available options that can elevate or suppress any of those attributes that you may or may not want in your coffee.
A quick note before we dive into today's podcast. If you like what you hear, I would love for you to subscribe to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, wherever you download your podcast. It would also be incredible if you take a minute to rate and review this podcast. Those things do matter and they really help us.
I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about.
So one of the areas of, I think, some of the biggest confusion in the grocery store is the dairy case. There's all these plant-based milks and yogurts, and it's sort of like a traffic stopper there. Those products have come really far. So you can now do plant-based milks, plant-based yogurts, and we've talked about those in recent podcasts. And some of them are like a really good substitute. Creamers are a little bit of a different story. And we're talking about creamers. We're talking about half and half, what we're putting in our coffee. And I think there's a couple of different reasons here. I speak as a person who loves real half and half in my coffee. I use that specifically for several different reasons, which we'll talk about. So when I'm looking for an alternative, it's just like anybody in their coffee. A lot of us are resistant to any change in our coffee. We kind of get in a routine. It's something that's, it feels like a very cumbersome, painful change to do anything different with our coffee. So if you are a half and half person and you're looking for something that's more of a plant-based option, number one, it's very, very different. The texture, the flavors of these are different. And then number two, it's simply something different with our coffee. So it can be a challenge all around. So we've got a taste test of 3 different plant-based creamers that nutritionally are really great that we're seeing in stores. And then 2 others that are actually more like a heavy cream, like a whipping cream that you could also use a dab of these. We're doing a taste test, y'all. I've been loving my taste tests, and I've got an expert. I thought, who better to join me to talk about coffee creamers than a coffee expert? And so I'm joined by Felton Jones. He is the Roastmaster for PJ's Coffee and New Orleans Roast Coffee. So welcome, Felton.
Thank you.
Felton and I did a podcast a couple of months ago on decaf coffee and kind of the decaf process. And I feel like I had met you in person, but I so enjoyed it. But I was like, I don't know that we've ever met face to face. So now we're in real life.
Yep.
Which is so unusual.
I know, right?
And so y'all, to kind of paint the picture of what we've got here, we have 5 different products in front of us that are plant-based creamers, 3 being marketed to us as a coffee creamer, 2 that are more like heavy whipping cream, all of them completely vegan, dairy-free. And then we have our coffee. And so I asked Felton, all right, if you're going to be tasting all these coffees and creamers, which coffee do I use? And you said PJ's, the Columbia Supremo?
Yes. Columbia has just been a very consistent coffee bean. Yeah. And I'm honestly, for about 3 years running now, I've considered Columbia as my favorite coffee right now. So,
all right. Yeah. I'm excited to try it. I've tried others in the PJ's line, but not this one. So tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, and why I roped you into tasting these.
So, title says it all, but, so many people say, well, what does a Roastmaster do? Obviously, big part of my career was centered around and still is roasting. But I'm not actually the person standing in front of the machine. I'm the brains behind making the decisions on what beans we're going to use, how we're going to roast them, understanding the characteristics of different beans from different origins and the versatility of those beans. So how do they perform in the roaster? In terms of, how we came across each other and doing these things, these very fun things. I'm also the brand ambassador, which puts me in a role of brand awareness, education, and sort of being the face of the brand, which has been really, really fun. It's an enjoyable thing. So, today is exciting really for me because you just said it. we're creatures of habit. It's especially with our coffee. So, I'm wondering if I'm going to be a convert by the end of this test today.
And you're personally not a big milk drinker. Lactose is a thing for you.
Yes.
And same for me. And so we were having a conversation a little bit before we hit the record button. And, so just for our listeners, like as you're thinking about cream, what goes in your coffee, half and half is a very low carb option. And so just like a lot of times that might be why someone's reaching for half and half is because they're watching their carbs. So they're going with cream versus milk. Milk has about 12 grams of sugar per cup, and all of that sugar is lactose. And cream, half and half, has slight amounts of it, but very, very low. So someone who's super, super sensitive to lactose still can't do half and half.
Right.
But if someone is just mildly sensitive to lactose, which I would say is me, then I can do half and half, no problems at all.
Right.
So I like that it's low sugar, but it's also low lactose. And so for me, that's part of why I reach for half and half. And so I think that that's sort of oh, really? For someone who says they've been trying other things in their coffee, but they really like half and half, and maybe they're trying to avoid lactose, well, it's still really low.
Yeah.
So Felton, for me personally, this is like a near and dear experiment that I've been doing over the past few months.
Okay.
And I've narrowed it down to these 3 brands for us to try that are kind of marketed here. So I'll be covering more on this later this fall, but it's one of these things that's kind of almost embarrassing to share because as a dietitian, nutritionally, everything, exercise, nutrition, I've got, it's probably no surprise, but a pretty solid routine going.
Right.
But my LDL cholesterol for the past 5 years has steadily gone up.
Okay.
And so typically you want your LDL ideally under about 100. There's some discrepancies of what that number should be. And the air quote should, but 100, maybe 130, depending on someone's risk factors. And so mine has steadily been 130s, 140s, 150s, and it's been hanging in these 160s for a while. And so, I'm talking with my primary care physician. And then we have a friend who's a cardiologist, and he's been also real generous about just sharing his knowledge and stuff. So I'm quick to say I don't have my cardiologist, but I'll reach out to him. And so they were sort of in alignment of, let's do some other tests. And I'll talk more about that. But there was not a urgent need based on everything else to say, let's do any kind of medication. And I was a little resistant to that. So I started taking a natural plant-based red yeast rice extract, which is what I'll be talking about. And then Dr. Levy, the cardiologist for our listeners, is going to be joining me later this fall. That after I've been on it for a couple of months, we're going to check my cholesterol levels. Okay. So I thought, why am I going to they said, if your cholesterol, your LDL makes it into the 190s, then we really highly recommend a statin.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, why am I going to just sit and wait?
Yeah, let's not. Yeah.
So I started taking a half dose of the red yeast rice, and it has compounds in it that actually are statin-like compounds. So it can be very effective, but it can also, you have to watch it because it can have same things, can be damaging to your liver. So it's not something to take lightly. So I started a half dose of that. And at the same time, my husband's like, we eat a lot of fish, we had a lot of shrimp, tons of plant-based oils, olive oil, avocados. The biggest contributor to saturated fat in my diet
was the milk.
Coffee creamer, half and half. Yeah.
Wow.
It was truly the biggest one.
So how much coffee do you drink in a day?
I've at least 3 cups.
Really?
How about you?
About the same. This time of year, today it's been 2 cups. Yesterday, working remotely, I can make the pot and I'll just pour until, I'm done. And usually about 3 cups in this time of year,
Do you do like a regular drip coffee? Like what's your or brewed coffee?
Yeah, brewed coffee for me, the preference is pour over. When I'm doing a lot of tasting or sampling with folks, I tend to use French press quite often. My go-to when I leave home in the mornings is a double shot of Americano.
Okay.
So, so I'll mix it up.
It sort of depends on where you are, what time of day it is, what's around.
Correct.
So I have 3 cups probably, and I would say maybe I would like to say an ounce, but probably 2 ounces, which is 4 tablespoons of half and half
Okay.
in each cup. So then you're looking at 12 tablespoons.
So you're not like this 75, 25%, coffee milk person. You're just enough to color it.
Yeah,
and kind of,
right.
It's a texture thing.
It's such a texture thing. So the half and half for me does it.
Yeah.
And, a friend of ours was like, when I told him we were doing this taste test, he said, well, what about just almond milk?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of people that would, ask that same question. And so something like almond milk is so thin.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have that same texture. Yeah. So before we're getting into these, tell us, like, as a coffee specialist and expert, what is it about it that half and half is doing something that when we get that thinner product, it's just not, it's not cutting it?
I think for a coffee drinker, there is a big difference between half and half and just regular milk. And I find myself fascinated when I do speak with someone who's very serious about their coffee. I know a lot of people who consider themselves as having coffee with their milk. So the milk compound becomes very important to those individuals. And I think that besides the flavor component, I think that it really is about texture. That's what's so interesting about today. Like, I'm excited to get into these heavy whipping creams because you only think about that from a perspective of cooking,
right?
At PJ's, making the whipped cream,
right?
From that, using the little chargers and whatnot. But in terms of just I just never thought about what would a heavy whipping cream do to your cup of coffee.
Because also not being a cream or milk person in your coffee.
Right.
Because I've thought about it a lot because there's a time of desperation that we run out of half and half, but we have heavy cream for something,
I'm always looking for like new information and fun facts. Last year, I came across a fun fact that said adding creamer to your coffee helps your coffee to stay hot longer.
Oh, that's strange.
And so I can only imagine that you're going to have a reduction in temperature when you introduce it. But maybe once again, going back to the texture, the body of, that cup of coffee now, it's like, are they saying that the milk adds an insulation factor?
It's like a little jacket on the top of your coffee, whereas without it, your coffee is so thin and almost porous.
Yeah.
And the heat coming out. What about the bitterness? I feel like it cuts some of what people perceive as that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I'll never forget traveling with Phyllis Jordan on one of my first trips for the company.
Phyllis Jordan as in PJs.
PJ. Yeah, the original PJ. And, she and I, we laugh about this every time we talk because I was sitting across the breakfast table from her and she reached for the milk and she reached for the sugar. And when I saw her put that in her coffee, I had never seen that before. And I asked about it and she said, this is how you drink bad coffee. So people do use milk and sugar, to really, make their coffee taste the way that they want to enjoy it. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I tell people all the time, the best way to enjoy coffee is your way. But in today's world, Molly, where you have so many varieties,
coffees that taste more like desserts.
Yeah, it is.
Milkshakes, right?
Yeah. And, people use the flavored creamers, were a big thing, but I don't even see that as being such a big thing. It's just a variety of the different offerings.
So many. And you're not finger wagging, but I'm going to finger wag for a second. That I think part of it is that just across the board, our yogurt doesn't taste like yogurt. Our oatmeal doesn't taste like oatmeal. They all have we're sold options, at least we can say, that are candied versions of these. And so what I would say to the person who says, but I need all of this, sugar or whatever to doctor up my coffee, for one, maybe reconsider which type of coffee you're having because if you're putting that much into it. And so the purer and the simpler that we can get to, not only is it less ingredients, less sugar, less, maybe of the artificials or any of that, but it's also like retraining our taste buds to not have everything be so sugary sweet,
And there's a mental aspect of it as well. I conducted a coffee tasting on this past Saturday at one of our Lafayette locations. And I I experience this often, but it really stands out to me when this happens. Much like I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone with these, varieties of milk for us to try. I take people out of their comfort zones by presenting coffees to them, and just as you said, good coffees, blindly, so they have no biases. They're simply just paying attention to what their taste buds, might be experiencing, and often when they come away from that, they want to start experiencing coffee
Right.
without all of those things added. Because when I do that, I don't allow them to put any sweeteners, any creamers in. We want to focus on the coffee.
And probably right at first, it's
It's a shock.
and then
Yeah.
as they go, their palates are adapting to it.
Yeah. And what I find interesting is I'll give it to them in a particular order, and then we change that order up. And when we change the order up, it's funny. It's just sit back and watch, because the conversations that are going to take place at that point are going to be something along the lines of, well, I was in favor of this one, but
Right.
now I kind of like this one
Right.
better, and so it's like that palate has gotten coated, you've kind of gotten across that initial shock, and now you're starting to pay attention to what's beneath the surface.
So the past few months of this podcast, I've done more taste tests with people. This is our third in the past few months than I've done really ever in the history of it. And so I'm hoping that people like them.
Yeah.
And I think that it's fun. And so we recently did one with an 11-year-old with milks, plant-based milks. She's a big milk drinker, and we had her and an adult that were weighing in on the plant-based milks.
Right.
We did that one totally blind.
Okay.
So they didn't see the packaging. And then we also did one on sports drinks that was, again, totally blind with a Saints player, Tano Passigno, and then a tennis pro, Amber Garza. And those were both blind. And I don't know why, but I felt like with this one, we needed to have the labels in front of you so you could see it as you go.
Right.
I don't know why. So it's not blinded, y'all. And then what I did for each of these creamers, and we have Nut Pods, which is an almond milk. It is a almond and coconut milk blend creamer. We have Califia Farms, which I've seen is kind of more popular, I think. I see it a lot for almond milk. And they have an unsweetened oat creamer. We have Laird, which is by, do you know Laird Hamilton, the surfer?
No, but I see the wave in the eggs.
And I think he signs the back as you have the bag of PJ's coffee. All has Felton's signature. But Laird Hamilton is a surfer who's married to Gabrielle Reese, who I think was like a professional beach volleyball player.
Okay.
And I didn't realize until I'd had this for a while that this was this Laird superfood creamer. I was like, and it has his name on it.
Wow.
And then the last two that we've got in front of us are Califia Farms. Again, this is their heavy whipping cream substitute. And then their vegan version of this, or dairy-free version. And then the brand Silk has another one. So these are the lineup that we've got of these 5. I have them all. I didn't pour them straight. We didn't pour them straight into a coffee. I put them all into I heated them first in a frother so that it took the chill out. It gave them all a little bit of froth. One thing that I find that with any of these, it has a little bit of coconut milk.
Okay.
If you just have it straight out of the carton, you risk having a chunk coming in.
Really?
And so it's interesting. So putting it in that frother that kind of whirls it up a bit and adds a heat to it can kind of settle that part out.
Okay.
So they're all like that. They're all in a ball jar. And so I was thinking, and I put them all in the glass mason, small mason jars, because I thought that if we had anything else, it could affect the flavor, especially being heated.
Agreed.
And I thought you would like that.
Yep.
All right. So we'll start with the Nut Pods. So what I'm thinking, y'all, and we'll just kind of figure it out as we go. I'm thinking we'll taste each of these with a spoon just straight out of it, and then we'll try it into our coffee. Okay. If you want to hand me your coffee, I'll pour for us. Let's see. Oh, and I'll just do a little splash of it for each of us. And this is, again, the Columbia Supremo. We also have a big empty Pyrex bowl in front of us that is our dump container. So we can dump each as we go.
Reminds me of an old-fashioned cupping.
All right. So see what you think of this one. Dip in your spoon to get just a taste straight of the Nut Pods. And all of these, I'll say, are very no carb, lower no carb, no sugar. They're all lactose free. Everything we're going to have is vegan, plant-based, dairy free. So every single thing we'll be talking about kind of fits that criteria.
I like this one.
Oh.
Yeah. The coconut is there. It's not overpowering. It's kind of subtle.
Did you get just the foam that was here, or did you get the whole shebang
I
under
just
it?
got the foam.
All right. So this one is water, coconut cream, almonds, some different gums and stabilizers that kind of hold everything together and give that thickness, of course. All right. So you want to put a
The
little
almond is
splash
kind of
coffee?
subtle in that one.
Yeah. The coconut is more.
Yeah.
Do you mind pouring a little bit of the cream? I'm okay if you double dip the spoon, if it ends up being
I
easier
sit
than
at cupping
pouring.
tables, so,
What did you say?
I sit at cupping tables, so we share a lot at cupping tables, so don't worry.
So what you poured, so we have maybe a couple of ounces of coffee in our little, we have these small little cups that we're having the coffee, and you gave us just a splash of the cream. I feel like it didn't change the color of the coffee much.
It didn't, and it really didn't dilute the coffee much at all.
It, to me, tastes a lot like black coffee right now.
It does, and I'm surprised because tasting it directly, it had a very sort of a thick texture to it, and it's not reflecting that with the coffee.
I feel that too. I would say as it performs in our coffee, I'm disappointed, but as I have it straight out of the carton, I feel like it's going to be a nice one. But the amount that I just put in that actually sort of brought my coffee to the color I'm used to with just a splash of half and half was probably about 3 times the amount of half and half.
Yeah, adding more to it, it does dilute the coffee nicely. Yeah, it's almost like a sort of a cappuccino kind of feel or latte feel.
So nice flavor, nice texture, but we had to use maybe 2 to 3 times what you would have thought.
Right. And the coconut is still subtle. So, what I would recommend this one about this one is that, it's a coconut milk. Tasting it straight, the coconut is definitely forward, but not overpowering. The almond was very subtle, but you would not necessarily know, depending on how you balance your coffee and your milk with this, it may actually hide the coconut, so you can just have the benefits of what coconut milk is.
Right.
Without having to taste coconut.
Sort of the purpose of this with we talked about reducing the animal fats. All right, so we're green lighting it.
Yep.
It's a good option there.
Yep.
All right, so I think what we're going to do next is I meant to do this in the beginning actually. We'll do a pure half and half just to kind of like almost set our taste buds, reset expectations on how much and
kind
such.
of mellow it out in between.
So I think tasting just a bit of that or how much you put in.
So I'm adding like what's more like a dollop of froth.
Okay. And I put what would probably be the equivalent of ratio to coffee, like maybe a quarter of cream to what I had of coffee. So just a tiny dab of it. And it did a really nice color change.
It absolutely did. I went almost maybe 3/4 coffee, 1/4 froth, and I still have a really, really strong coffee taste.
The color change of it was nice. The smoothness that it gives, and compared to the nut pods, I didn't need as much of the half and half.
Correct.
But that's just sort of, it's super neutral. Like it doesn't really leave us with a strong flavor of anything. No. All right. So next we'll try, the next one that we've got is the Califia, and this is the oat creamer. So I believe that y'all might have oat milk at PJ's.
Yeah, we do.
I'm not a fan of oat milk, just as the ingredient itself. It's a high carb, and I kind of call it carb water. And I feel like there's so many other milk alternatives that oat milk nutritionally just isn't my favorite. And so when my husband was looking at the lineup, he said, oat creamer, why are you talking about that one as a good option? But the creamer here is actually really low carb. It's still 0 sugar, less than 1 gram of carb. The nut pods that we tasted first had 10 calories a tablespoon. We should mention that half and half has about 20 and a couple of grams of fat per tablespoon. This one has 15, so kind of in line there. And then we can taste, just kind of getting your thoughts on just straight up off the spoon, a little bit of that frothed creamer. And so this is the Califia oat milk creamer.
Wow. I didn't expect that to be so sweet, and it says unsweetened.
Right. Right. So the ingredients in this are, I have my glasses on and it's still hard. It's light, light print on a light green, but it is oat milk. So just water and oats. It's got some sunflower oil. It has an ingredient in here called natural flavor, and then the different gums and stabilizers. So I think what we're picking up on is probably what is encompassed in natural flavor. How do you describe this one? That flavor of it?
It has it's oat milk, but it's shocking because I'm tasting vanilla notes. And so when I speak on being surprised by the level of sweet with something that's labeled as unsweetened, with zero sugar, I'm pleasantly surprised. I would actually, if I were to use this one as my choice of creamer in my coffee, this would definitely prevent me from wanting to add anything else to sweeten my coffee.
That's a really good point. How do you feel how it does in your coffee?
It kind of bombed.
You didn't like it?
Well, it just that, I thought that I put a good enough ratio of milk to coffee, and I think probably would need more. Let's see, I'll add a little bit more and see.
And as you look at these, y'all, for our listeners, they stick to the sides of the wall of the glasses. They are thick, yet for each of these, it's like, we got to put a little bit more in there. So this Califia Farms oat creamer that Felton's getting a second sip after he made it a little bit stronger ratio.
Lot better, but the coffee kills the sweet.
Okay.
So
it's sort of neutral now.
Yeah, it's very neutral. Very neutral.
Interesting. So I agree. We did a very brief 2-minute segment on these with WGNO and Hank, the meteorologist. We did the segment with him, and his feedback specifically on this product was, it has the smell of an oatmeal cookie.
Okay.
I thought that was interesting, and I see where he's coming from. And so he picked up on cookie. You picked up on the sweetness, the vanilla notes.
Yep. But that cookie that you're talking about, my palate is laced with that now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's this one is pleasantly surprising.
If someone likes the flavored creamers, a flavored vanilla creamer, or even like a flavored cinnamon creamer, and there's all the fat-free, sugar-free versions that are anything but natural, this would be a notch better nutritionally. It's a notch more natural. So if someone's a flavored creamer person, the Califia Farms Zero Sugar Oat Creamer would be a good option.
I would definitely recommend this one. I think, though, that, from a marketing perspective, what's great about this taste test is that if I read the label, I would totally not expect what we just experienced. So I wonder how much of an impact that is to them in terms of marketability.
I don't know. I feel like right now, as much as I sort of am down on oat milk is having its moment. And so I think it's just selling itself. Someone says, ooh, unsweetened oat creamer, and then they're racing to it because it's oat.
So being someone that's not a milk person on a regular basis, there's certain beverages that when you walk into a cafe, you're going to order, and there's, it's going to contain milk. I'll admittedly say that for myself, today is super informative because I will make my choice of either oat or almond when I get my PJ's Velvet Ice, but not for any reason other than just to choose one that's, non-dairy.
Right.
So, understanding the difference, it was more of a habitual thing to stay away from the lactose, but now I'm starting to wonder, I need to pay attention to what my Velvet Ice tastes like with almond versus oat. And
weigh in with that. Yes. Tell me this. I would say you could do it with half and half, but that'd be a lot of half and half. Then we'd be back in the boat that I'm trying to avoid of so much. Okay. Our next one is the Laird, and this is called Laird Superfood Creamer. This is the one by Laird Hamilton, the surfer, who has an impressive array of different products on shelves. And so this one is, I'll let you taste it first and weigh in.
Okay, so love the texture. I like the fact that you frothed these. That was a great idea. It was kind of flat in flavor profile, but then the coconut comes in at the very end of the taste experience.
What about salt? Do you pick that up
I
in?
do, yes, yes. Not in an overpowering way, but it's definitely there, and I think that might be what you get on the front end, and why the coconut is subtly, it just kind of floats in at the end.
What I think is interesting is it's only 15 milligrams of sodium, which is crazy low. A teaspoon's like 2,300. So it's just a dab of it. The ingredients: coconut milk, coconut oil. So it's coconut milk and coconut oil, which some of the others don't have coconut oil.
I may
And then,
explain the texture.
right.
Yes.
And that's also where I think some of the chunks may come from, is the coconut oil kind of hardening in there if you have it in the fridge. But then it has sea salt and also baking soda. And then it has things like organic lion's mane mushroom extract, and then some different mushroom extracts to help with the theory there being cognitive benefit of the mushroom extracts.
I think we'll label this one as somewhat complex.
Now, if I was to have seen mushroom extracts on the front of the label, I don't think I would have even picked it up.
I'm looking at it on the side, functional mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so they don't have it on the front of the label. I don't remember if they used to or not, but I don't know that I would have even wanted to try that one for that reason.
Yeah.
But I don't pick up on any mushroom flavor.
No, I don't. And as you're pointing that out, I'm starting to wonder if the mushroom might be a play on just this whole mushroom craze. Like,
Yeah.
the frequency that I'm asked about mushroom coffee these days, it's unsettling.
There's more salt and baking soda than there are the mushroom extracts.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. So it's a dab of it. All right. So we tasted it plain. We're going to try it in our coffee now.
Okay. I feel like I'm showing just how badly my latte art experience is today.
In fairness to you and me, they're in little mason jars, which are not pourable friendly. We don't have a spout that we're pouring with.
And I'm left-handed. I'm doing this with my right hand. We're working this out.
All right. So tasting it with the layered superfood creamer.
Ooh, the salt is elevated. Quite a bit.
Too.
Yeah.
I think so too. I also really like salt.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I gravitate to this one of these three.
Okay.
I think because of that.
I think that if I were drinking this as a cup of coffee with this as my creamer, I would not add enough sugar to sweeten it. I would add enough sugar to balance out the salt.
Really?
Yeah, I think yeah.
Where I've landed. So, I shared my LDL woes earlier, and where I've landed is this layered superfood. I'll do about 2/3, 1/3 of the layered superfood, and then just still half and half.
Okay.
So I feel like, you know what?
Yeah.
It's a lot better. I probably cut my half and half by about 2/3. I use this, but it's as you poured it into our coffee, just like these others before it, you need more to get that same kind of creaminess or lightening effect. And so adding that little bit of real half and half to me still keeps me happy with my coffee.
Right.
But primarily plant-based creamer.
I think, and obviously it would probably make a difference which flavored coffee, but I think that this one would be a very good complement to a flavored coffee,
which is going to give the natural sweetness to balance the saltiness.
Mm-hmm.
So we've wrapped up our 3 so far that are marketed to us as coffee creamers.
Yes.
We've had the nut pods, which was a surprising yes to Felton right out. We had our Califia oat milk creamer, and then we had our layered superfood, which is the coconut milk and coconut oil in here. Of these 3, which would you gravitate to?
I'm gonna have to say the nut pods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The coconut is at a perfect level. The almond is there serving its purpose, but this is obviously a coconut, milk, and I like the texture. I think that if I were to put milk in my coffee of these 3, I would go with the nut pods.
And so the good news is that nut pods of these is probably the most common that you can find in other stores and plant-based creamers.
Right.
There's all different flavor varieties. I just got us of all of these, I should also say, they were all original unflavored of these. The last two are just kind of dip your spoon in there, see what you think. We can put them in your coffee because I know that you want to see what goes on with the coffee there. We can try these almost as a back-to-back, but one is the Califia Farms. The other is the Silk. The Califia Farms, this is the heavy whip that is the dairy-free. It's like a whipping cream. And this is it's coconut oil based.
Okay. Didn't pick up on the coconut.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm going to stick my spoon in there now. Okay. And then the next one is Silk. I'm interested to see what you think of this one. I think part of the reason I didn't do a blind taste test for us on this is they're all very similar looking also. Before with the milk to the sports drinks, I could tell what was what by even the color of the milk.
Really?
But these, they're all pretty neutral and creamy. That you don't have any that are higher yellow or brown or tones. Okay. So what did you think of the Silk?
So taste wise, flavor profile wise, they're very similar. But the Califia is, you know what? It tastes like sort of like an unsweetened whipped cream.
Yeah. Which is kind of what it is.
Yeah.
It's to be used as that. So the reason I said it as I did, of the first three are marketed to us as coffee creamers. These last two are marketed to us as whipping cream alternatives. So if you were going to make something that needed a whipped topping, you would use these as like your vegan alternative.
Yeah.
In my desperation to find something thicker than these first three, I was looking for these. See what you think of how it does in your coffee.
You know, what's interesting is that we're tasting these, and when you say heavy whipping cream, I often think of an ingredient in a recipe for cooking. And so we're looking at these in terms of coffee and tasting it just now without, adding anything or doing anything to it. It doesn't taste like something that I would use to make a pasta with or something like that. It actually tastes more dessert forward.
And if we'll look at kind of the thickness as we're pouring it into your coffee. It's if you're pouring it straight out of the carton, they're a lot thicker. They thinned out when I put them in the frother and warmed them.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a little splash of each. I might have gone a heavier. I should have had you do the pour so you knew what your pour is.
One thing that's unique about this is I can taste the coffee. I can decipher between what I'm tasting with the coffee and what I'm tasting with the heavy whipping cream. So it didn't overpower the coffee. It sort of complemented the coffee.
What's interesting is as thick as it is, and what we're trying right now is the Califia Heavy Whip. Again, every product we're talking about, dairy-free, vegan, lactose-free, zero sugar carbs, all of that stuff. So this is the Califia Heavy Whip dairy alternative. As we poured it into there, I did even a little bit heavier pour, and it still didn't make our coffee white or light. It still kept a really dark coffee. And this is me speaking to the Roastmaster here, but what I felt like it did was almost rounded out the coffee.
Yes.
And so while the Columbia Supremo is not a bitter coffee at all,
right,
any little bitter notes that were there, it kind of buffered that even a little more.
It did. And I just went back and added a little bit more, and it made the coffee more subtle. But the more I added, I'm getting a very silky coating on my palate.
You're right about that. It's, I think you might have crossed the limit to where it just turned into whipping cream in your coffee. You're right, because I've had that, and so much so that it coats the roof of your mouth, and you're like, oh. And I think then if you are trying these in your coffee and you have that, back it down a notch, because you probably are it's gonna just gunk up everything in there.
Even on my lips.
Yeah, exactly. So cross that threshold. The other one I think is probably going to be pretty similar to this. We've got these two whipping cream alternatives, the Silk, the Califia Farms. We did the Califia Farms first. We probably should have done it second. It's my favorite, but we'll see what you think about
Okay.
the silk. For some reason, I feel like the silk version of the creamer is a little more coconut forward.
You know, you deserve a compliment because it looks like you brewed the perfect amount of coffee to get us through this, right?
I was also a little stingy with our pours along the way, but we do have enough if there's one that you want to revisit. So we're on our last of these heavy creamers. And this is the brand Silk, which is, most people would know Silk for the soy milk.
Is there coconut in that one?
It's a lot of coconut.
Okay.
So the ingredients of the Silk is not coconut milk, but it's coconut oil, sunflower oil, faba bean protein. So do you know what's interesting? And also the first one that we tried, which is the Califia, that one is similarly, it doesn't have coconut milk. I guess being the creamer, the heavy cream type base, both of these are very similar ingredients: coconut oil, sunflower oil, the fava bean protein. If you've ever had have you ever used, if you drain something like chickpeas and you can use the liquid of the chickpea and whip it, and it can almost be like an egg white froth.
Oh.
It's like an egg white replacer if you're using that. I think this is a little bit of the concept of what's in here.
Okay.
And so it's adding a thickness with that to it, is my guess. I haven't talked with the company and asked that, but as I see the fava bean protein isolate, it's either isolate specifically from the bean, or it kind of reminds me of the liquid that's coming off of that, and we're thickening it. And then both of these have the gums, various either xanthan or gellan gum or guar gum. And a lot of people specifically want to avoid gums. And I would say, unless you're having something that you feel is a reason, there's enough other things that I would say let's be mindful of.
Right.
And it doesn't scare me away from any of these products. Okay. So of these two, did you have a preference?
I'm going to have to say the Silk.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. I think that just by itself, it's pretty consistent. But the Califia seems to be more heavier on that silkiness.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing. It's just that it took a while for it to go away for me.
I did a little heavy pour with us on both of these, and same thing, like all of these, that what you think is going to be a heavy pour still leaves your coffee pretty dark.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. But I'm going to stick with the Silk.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So of the three that are marketed as coffee creamers, Nut Pods is your go-to.
Yes.
And then of the two that are heavy cream, I would say, I feel like someone would say, well, why would I need the heavy creams? I feel like they gave the buffering of any bitterness even more than the first ones.
Yeah.
Because of that, heavy fat content.
Yeah. And, when I tried the Califia, the first thing that I said was that I could actually decipher between the coffee and the heavy whip. I think it's just holding its consistency. And so it was easy for me to pick it out. The coconut was kind of subtle on there, but I think of those two, the Silk is definitely where I would go. But if I had to choose from across the board, the Nut Pods was the best experience for me.
As we've done this exercise, it's sort of like I've had this visual that just kind of came in of, when you think of coffee and the different compounds of coffee, you can, I know, say it so much more eloquently, but there's all the different notes of the coffee that are going to hit us. There's maybe the immediate flavor. There's the, what we would consider maybe the flavor of the coffee. And then we keep talking about bitterness because I feel like it's the fat content in cream, or half and half for these plant-based creamers, that is almost, is it coating our tongue? Is it interacting with the coffee itself to buffer that?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it's also worthwhile to let the audience know that, we've called the coffee by name, so it's Colombia, but this is a medium roast. So, you could imagine that there's probably going to be some differences if we did this
Yeah,
with a
good
dark
point.
roast, you know. Also, I think that while the dark roast would be known to have a more bold flavor, um, I think that maybe the body of it might have actually been more receptive, you know, of some of what these different milks have to offer. And, you know, if we did this experience again with a dark roast, we'd probably have some very different content.
So you could even narrow it down to maybe one or two of the plant-based creamers and then try those with different coffees.
Yeah.
When you say the body, what do you mean?
So body is something that, you know, I describe body to my students as thinking about taking a sip of whole milk versus 2%. And just you know, sort of that watered down mouthfeel that you get with the 2% or low fat versus that, you know, real full feeling that you get with the whole milk. In terms of coffee, you kind of get that same thing. It used to be people would always think of darker roast coffees being more heavy bodied. I find that sometimes they can be forward with a like a strong or a pungent type of flavor profile, but also oftentimes be what I call empty, where you kind of have a washed out factor. We did this with Columbia Supremo, excuse me, and it has a heavy body in terms of the roast profile and what's in the cup. But whenever you do medium roast, you're leaving a lot more flavor components to expose themselves. And so I think the complexity of the coffee and the flavor profile of the coffee, trying that with these different options, I think that's why we have such a vast difference amongst all of them across the board, in my opinion.
So I think our answer comes to, okay, what is the best plant-based creamer? And that is, it's up to you.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's, we've got these nutritionally that we've narrowed it down to, and I'll have them listed out in the episode notes. Felton's favorite is the nut pods. Mine is the layered. Nutritionally, again, they're all plant-based. They're all lactose-free. They're all, low carb, no sugar. What I'd say is whatever you're going to put into your coffee, ideally, if you're having kind of that specialty coffee here and there that you're stopping in and you get something that's more of a dessert than a real coffee, and it's just the occasion, that's one thing. But your day in, day out coffee, if we can find a way to keep it low or no sugar and just really kind of, again, retraining our taste buds to go back to more of those real notes of the coffee versus making it so sweet. So whether it's one of these plant-based creamers or you're using the real half and half, but you use just a light splash, or you are using something like almond milk, even though we were talking about how much thinner that is. If you say, you know what? Yeah, it's thinner, but I actually still really like a splash of just unsweetened almond milk in my coffee, not creamer, but just milk. Okay. So it's finding out, what do you like? What works well in that coffee for you? And how can you make it something that is really working to your benefit nutritionally while it's also still really enjoyable to you?
Yeah, and we did this just with the thought process of how does it pair with just regular hot drip coffee. One thing that I want to point out for the listening audience is that the froth, the consistency and how well it has held up on all of these is impressive.
Right.
So for all of our at-home, self-proclaimed baristas, if you're whipping up your coffee at home, these are very good options in terms of you can really do a nice cappuccino with a nice froth.
You're right, because we're more than 45 minutes and I frothed these at least 10, 15 minutes before you got here.
Yeah,
and so it's a solid hour that they're holding with that nice froth. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So good stuff, y'all. There's options. Just like, so much nutritionally now, the food industry and the beverage industry they're continually making new products. There's a lot of them that nutritionally, maybe not so good. There's a lot of things there that may taste good or sort of lure us in. And then on the flip side, there's so much good that is happening out there. And so it just goes to whatever has kind of been that routine that we fall into. We said right at the beginning, it's hard to want to change your coffee. I think especially if you've got, well, if you're listening and you're like, ooh, I love the sugar-free vanilla creamer, there is nothing natural about that. My parents use that sugar-free vanilla creamer.
Really?
I carry my own half and half when I go there.
Yeah.
And because to me, it takes over. That's all.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And so if it's the sugar-free or fat-free flavored creamers, just next time you go to the store, pick up one of these. Stores, of course, like a Whole Foods, have the best selection of these, but you'll see these, at least some of these, at any store.
Mm-hmm.
But, we said earlier, if you're looking for that flavored creamer profile, probably that Califia Farms oat creamer is the one that Felton was like, it has kind of the most vanilla notes.
I would definitely recommend, if someone is looking for a flavored alternative, there's nothing on here that says it's flavored other than it being an oat creamer. And I like the nut pods, but an honorable mention is the Califia Farms unsweetened oat. It's definitely something that could replace your French vanilla flavoring.
So I think leaving our listeners with, if you feel sure that your coffee is as nutritious as it could be, as low sugar, as natural, as pure as possible, then I hope that this was like an interesting listen to you. But if you're like, you know what? I have been adding fill in the blank, that's the sugar-free or fat-free or high sugar version that's either synthetic or just like not so good for me. Do us just a favor, just this one time, next time you're going, just pick up something different, try that in your coffee. And it's just like anything. The first cup you try of it, you may go, but once you finish out the container that you purchased, just run through that, give yourself a few days worth of tasting it and just see. And if you're like, you know what, still don't love it. All right. But I think just kind of breaking out and trying some of these things that, just like me with the half and half, everything that we're looking at, okay, how can I make that a notch better for me?
Yeah. And what I would add to that is when you're trying it, just understand that you're not going to get it right on the first or the second try, your coffee to milk ratio. So, give it a try, be open-minded and try a few different ratios to see if you can dial it into, exactly what you're looking for.
You have an article you're going to send and we can, I think, post that on the episode notes if it's open to the public to see the article. It's about baristas who are mixing and matching the different
They are. Yeah. And I think, one of the things that I learned that is very important to them, and that's where the whole, plant-based milk craze came from, is they do a lot with like latte art and competitions. And I find that when I go to coffee competitions, the use of just regular milk is a rarity. They are using, different plant-based milks, lots of oat milk, lots of almond milk. So it's not surprising to me that they're getting that much more vested. What I would also say is this is only a variety of 5. So if I were to think like these baristas are thinking, there's some attributes that each offers and maybe, sort of like a mixologist, finding what's best of each and finding ways to marry them. So haven't run into it out in the field, but excited, looking forward to seeing, and experiencing it if I do run across it for sure.
And we'll send you home with your favorites so you can try it at home. Thank you so much for your time, Felton.
Thanks for having me, Molly.
This is my second podcast that I've done with Felton. He is such a wealth of knowledge. He's so open to new ideas. He's open to change. He's open to discovering new types of products. Even if you listen to our past podcast that we talked about the processing used for decaffeinated coffee, talking about his experimenting with even like other non-coffee products that people are reaching for to kind of fill that space of decaf coffee. So I really appreciate and respect his knowledge, the depth of what he's experienced and how much he's trained his palate, his mind, his exposure to all the different aspects of coffee. So much more to this. The complexities there than we even are aware of as most of us are taking that sip of coffee. So with that, we have the links to the different plant-based creamers that we talked about. His favorite, as y'all heard, is nut pods. Mine is the layered. All the ones we tried today were unflavored, but I will say they do have low and no sugar versions of flavored versions. And then just to kind of another quick summary note, if someone does like flavored creamers, we both agree that the Califia Farms oat-based creamer, which is still lower carb than a lot of oat milks. If you're looking to avoid dairy or traditional half and halves, I always want to hear about it. I learned so much about products and strategies from you guys, so always share it with me. I'm registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. And if you'd like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join us next time for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.